Do you, as a business owner, know where to start your next success story? There are between 170 to 180 municipalities in South Africa licensed to distribute electricity to consumers. That's approximately 200 different tariffs under different local rules, making comparison and regulation extremely difficult. We are joined today by Inge, who have compared 44 of the different municipal electricity tariffs, and the results are shocking. From small cell phone shops, clothing stores, restaurants and supermarkets, the cost differences across South Africa are massive. Today, we are diving into what's really happening behind your electricity bill. So stick around to see if your local municipality is featured. This is the Utilities Decoder, and in today's episode, we're taking municipal tariffs head to head. To help us unpack what is really happening in these municipality electrical tariffs, I'm joined today by the COO of UMFA, the one and only Miss Inge Gous. Inge is a registered professional electrical engineer with ECSA, an entrepreneur, and a seasoned expert with over 18 years of experience in utility solutions, tariff analysis, and project management. Inge brings not only deep technical insight, but also a passion for solving real-world problems with practical solutions. Welcome, Inge.
Thank you, Ryan. What a privilege to be here.
Great, Summer. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us out of your busy schedule. I've been fortunate enough to go through the data that you provided, and we'll be sharing that shortly for everyone to see. But I'm totally blown away by the cost differences across South Africa. These differences are massive and appear to be excessive if we think of the increases advertised in the news. Inge, why don't we start off by giving us a brief summary of what we're about to see and what you have taken into consideration when looking at these increases?
Sure, Ryan. We've analyzed real data from 44 municipalities by using a set consumption and connection size, typical of these stores, and applied the various municipal tariffs. The comparison included small and large businesses across different categories, from small cell phone shops, clothing stores, restaurants, and supermarkets. We've applied the tariffs for the 2019-2020 as a starting point, and then compared that to the 24-25 tariffs. This gave us the increases across several years of billing cycles.
Sure, okay. So based on the data that you've collected, which shops of similar sizes and consumption have similar utility bills across the country?
I think now would be a great time to bring up the graphs, and we can do a quick run through of some of the different categories and what we observed in 2019-2020.
Great, let's do that. But before we start diving into the comparisons, if you've missed our first two episodes where we ran through the basics of what you need to know when talking utilities, please go and check them out. Right, over to you, Inge.
If we took a small business like a cell phone shop, which has a single phase connection, a 60 amp breaker, and consuming roughly 1,700 units a month, and you were situated in Municipal City, you would be paying just over 35,000 Rand per month. Now, for exactly that same shop, consuming the same amount of power, if you were billed by City of Joburg in 2019-2020, you would have paid 57,000 Rand. That's a difference of over 20,000 Rand just because of where you were situated.
That seems excessive to me, especially if you consider how little power a cell phone shop actually needs. Was there similar trends within the clothing stores?
Well, actually, yes. A clothing shop with a 60 amp breaker consuming just under 5,000 units would have paid almost 25,000 Rand in Newcastle. And that exact same store would have been charged 56,000 Rand in NERSA. Again, that's a difference of over 30,000 Rand per month, purely due to the location of the store.
That's ridiculous. Imagine how many additional pairs of socks and jocks you'd need to sell just to cover the difference in utilities, purely because of who supplies your shop with electricity. I think, Inge, let's take a look at a restaurant, and why not, let's look at some stops on some of the two best holiday routes that I can think of. What would electricity cost for a restaurant in Municipal near Bella Bella, and let's say Bloemfontein on the way down to the Cape?
This is an interesting one. Well, again, in 2019-2020 cycle, a restaurant in Municipal with a 100 amp breaker, consuming just over 10,000 units per month, would cost you 91,000 Rand per month. Whereas that same restaurant in Bloemfontein would have cost you 230,000. That's a difference of 138,000 Rand a month.
138,000, and just because of where you're located. If I think of some of the big consumers, such as a supermarket, I can only assume the same irrationality persists. But before we look at how the increases in 2024 and 2025 would have affected these types of establishments, What would a supermarket at the same two locations have paid in 2019-2020?
Now this is where it gets really interesting. A supermarket in Modimolle versus a supermarket in Bloemfontein, we've taken an average notified demand of 350 kVA, 130,000 units per month, and a peak consumption of 280 kVA. Would have paid in Modimolle 1.8 million rand per year, whereas in Bloemfontein, that same supermarket would have paid 2.8 million. That's a difference of just under R1 million.
I'm literally speechless. It's clear that there appears to be no logic surrounding the implementation and structure of the municipal tariffs. From the data that you've provided, these inconsistencies are right across the board. Just when I was hoping that some form of rationality and uniformity would have prevailed in the past few years, the rates from 2024 to 2025 were shocking to say the least. With increases of up to 417% in some of these regions, I think we should take a look at some of the increases for the stores and the locations that we've just looked at.
Sure, Ryan. Keep in mind, these increases are for the same size shop and consumption as 2019-2020, with the only difference being the increase in municipal rates. That cell phone shop in Mogale City increased by 217% and cost an additional 42,000 Rand to operate from the July 2019 up until June 2024. That shop in City of Joburg increased by 148%, costing an additional almost 28,000 Rand. The clothing shop in Newcastle had an increase of 167% to the value of 124,000 Rand. And the store in Knysna, 273%. That increase is due as almost a value of 281,000 Rand. Can you imagine how much additional clothes you need to sell just to cover electricity? Never mind anything else that went up.
Sure. Inge, how did the increases look for restaurants and supermarkets, as these are higher power consumers?
Well, that restaurant in Modimolle we spoke of, they had an increase of 417%, and Bloemfontein an increase of 160%. However, the one to note was Knysna. Knysna had an increase of 277,000, which seems average. But to operate that same restaurant in Knysna will now cost you 470,000 Rand more in 2024-25. That's almost double of what you would be paying in Modimolle, even with their 417% increase. The supermarket in Modimolle increased by 248, which is almost 250%, while that same supermarket in Bloem increased by 175%. Operating the supermarket in Modimolle now costs 4.6 million Rand a year. This is an increase to the value of 2.8 million annually. These jumps are not just inflation, they're inconsistent and hard to justify.
I fully agree. And looking over the 44 municipalities that you've provided for us, this does not paint a pretty picture for business owners, especially if we think of the new increases and structures being proposed for 2026. I know we've just touched on a few of these regions, but if you would like to receive this valuable data, which is exclusive to UMFA, stick around and we'll let you know how to get them after a quick thanks to today's sponsor. UMFA is currently celebrating 20 years and would like to remind you that the deadline to obtain a valid energy performance certificate is fast approaching. UMFA can guide you in understanding your energy profile through smart metering and the UMFA portal, giving you insight into consumption patterns and helping you prepare for the certificate requirements. Avoid penalties, unlock efficiency, be future ready with UMFA. Feel free to check out the website by following the link in the description. UMFA, the power behind your business. Welcome back. I know those figures were a lot to digest, but surely there is some light at the end of the tunnel. Inge, South Africa has its own regulatory service who are entrusted to regulate and verify the proposed increases. Firstly, let's start with who is our regulating body, and in your opinion, have they fulfilled their mandate?
Well, in South Africa, we have NERSA, the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, and they are meant to ensure tariffs are fair and cost reflective. But over 170 municipalities distributing electricity, we're seeing massive inconsistencies. NERSA is burdened with an impossible task. There is no baseline. Some municipalities include certain charges, others don't. Some exceed NERSA's guidelines entirely. Without a standardized, cost-reflective baseline, NERSA is essentially trying to regulate in the dark. Tariff applications vary wildly, with little consistent logic between them. But there is a solution which we will be proposing.
Fantastic. We're all about solutions. But first, what do these increases look like for business owners? And what is the impact?
I'm going to mention two very big issues. The first is the resale versus purchase tariffs. In Municipal, for example, which was previously known as Brits, landlords are paying more for electricity than what they can legally recover from tenants. That means every month, winter or summer, they are running at a loss. A dangerous situation for a commercial property owner and small businesses. But what can they do? That's the tariff they can legally sell energy for. And then the bigger business impact is, of course, the unpredictable tariffs destroy confidence. You can't plan or grow a business if your energy bill might be double next year. In sectors like hospitality and retail, electricity is one of the top 3 expenses, which a few years ago was not a relevant factor. And a 200 to 300% increase can kill off all profit margins entirely.
I fully agree. And I mean, we've looked at some of these increases. We're talking differences of millions, hundreds of thousands, just depending on locations. It's nonsense. So we've covered this in the last episode, but effectively any consumer is paying for 4 things when it comes to electricity. We've got our basic charges, which is normally your connection to the grid, your consumption, which is the kilowatt hours which you've consumed, a demand charge, which is the peak usage in kVA or your kilowatt, and the notified maximum demand. That's your agreed supply with the municipality or service provider. The problem, as I see it, is not every municipality calculates or applies these charges the same way. The big question that I have is, can it be fixed?
To restore fairness and predictability, we need national level reform. That means consistent structures, regular reporting, and enforced transparency across all municipalities. Until then, businesses in one town will continue to pay double or more than what others do, with no clear reason why.
Sure. Thank you so much for joining me today and taking the time out of your very busy schedule. We appreciate all the work that you and your team at UMFA do and are putting in to shape the future of utilities. And we really look forward to our next discussion.
Only a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Inge. So, what's the takeaway from today? If you're a business owner, you need to know your tariff. Do not assume that you're paying the same rate as your peers, and don't assume regulation means fairness. We will be looking into the new 2025 to 2026 increases in a future episode, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss out. A very big thank you to Inge for joining us today and sharing this valuable insight. If you would like a copy of the tariff tables discussed today, kindly like the video and drop a comment below whereby we will provide you with this valuable data. Coming up, in our next episode, we meet with Tommy Dietrich from Renew Consulting to discuss his formal objection which has been lodged with NERSA surrounding these tariffs, and we provide you with more valuable insights. Until then, stay informed, stay efficient, and stay empowered. Thanks for watching.